Hello, everyone. This is Vincent Messina. I am the Vin of the Curious Marketer with Vin. I am here with my partner in crime, Ammon Johns. Say hello, Ammon.
Hello, Alan. Got you again.
It's sort of becoming a tagline, is it not? Anyways, last week we started a series within the series, capitalizing on Ammon's rich background and expertise in search engine optimization. This week, last week, the topic of discussion was basically how search engines work. So obviously, we couldn't go into excruciating levels of depth, but we covered sort of the mechanics, the technical side of search engines. This week, what we want to do is get into the human side of search engine optimization and talk about how people actually use search engines across the board, and then shifting the conversation in the direction of where we're going next week, and that is how do we make this search engine utilization work for our business? How do we meet the people that we're targeting as our target audience out in search engines? And so, with that, why don't we kick things off by talking a little bit about how people use search engines?
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Ammon,
Well, the simplest thing is that it depends. And we are more and more turning to the search engines for everything. There was a time when it was a little bit scary. And if you couldn't find something through other means, you went to your directory and you couldn't seem to find that much, or you weren't sure how to go about looking for it, you would turn to a search engine. And in those early days, the average query was one word, maybe two. The long query was 3 words. People were kind of very tentative, and we've certainly seen that change massively. Now, although the average query with that, there still were very, very long queries. Sometimes people are ultra specific, or they ask in the form of a question. So you literally can get a full question being asked. But it's still one of those things where you can often determine how experienced somebody is online by the way that they search. And when you are targeting people, this is always an important consideration. How
what
savvy is your average user? And therefore, whether they're going to be making quite simple queries or quite complex queries.
what are people searching for?
Oh, well, let me see. Pretty much as long as there's been an internet, one of the top things is adult industry. Travel is always up there, but it's often aspirational. Shopping's quite low, and that's all shopping. In the broadest terms, it's the same statistic we gave last time. 10% of all queries made on a search engine are navigational. They already know where they want to go, they just can't quite remember the address, or can't be bothered to type in the full address. Sometimes it's quicker to type Amazon into a search box than type out http:// and all the rest of it. So that's 10% of all searches are navigational. Now, we often include brand within that because it's very clear where they want to go. If somebody puts in Nike website, it's pretty obvious that they already know exactly where they want to go. They're not looking for somebody to make them a new Nike website. 80% of all search, the vast majority, is what we call informational search. And this is everything from who won the World Cup in 1915 to what was the name of Nelson Mandela's wife. Any kind of question that comes up, and there's a lot of pub quizzes out there where people would like to cheat with search engines. Anything you want to look up, you tend to turn to a search engine these days. Google has become the oracle of our age.
Yeah, in fact, most of the conversations I engage in online, if it weren't for Google and Wiki, I probably wouldn't be able to engage. Um, that was kind of a joke. I Google real time is my point. So when I have a topic that I don't understand, or someone throws a word out there or a phrase like a proof of absence is absence of proof, I search immediately to try to figure out what Greek myth or Greek god that came from so that I could understand it. But yes, the idea is that people are searching for, by and large, for information. This is a really important consideration, particularly when you're in the B2B space, which a third of my world is B2B. The other part is B2C. But still, people are looking, at least at first, not necessarily to make a purchase or anything, but to find and discover information. I think this is what gave birth to this whole notion of the thing that we talked about before, one of the sessions previous, is content, right? The idea of content. Well, content is that thing that answers those questions. And so if you're the one that's answering those questions on a more regular, consistent basis, chances are you're building up a brand. But that's the point. Point is what are they searching for, and what are their habits? And so then when you look at it from a user experience perspective, most of the time people are searching really just for information. They're not looking to make any kind of a decision or choice. This sort of speaks to the evolution of somebody's need or requirement to actually make a purchase. But how upfront, like what in your background and your experience, where's the line drawn, if you will, between I'm searching just for knowledge and I'm searching for actually a solution to the problems that I have? How soon, how far, where does that line start to move towards a purchase?
That's so tricky to pinpoint, because where is it in their mind? You know, do they expect to find a solution when they start? Sometimes people will do almost an idle search, or I don't want to fix this, so I want to find evidence that it isn't really worth my while fixing. You know, a lot of people do go through that, especially if their wife has been nagging them to finally fix that thing they've been promising to fix for ages. Oh, well, I looked it up and it's going to cost a lot more than we got this month. So, you know, I can't do it. Sorry, darling. Google defines transactional search slightly different. Transactional search in the search engine's definition is anything where the person is going to interact rather than just consume. So where can I submit my CV? Where can I download music? Where can I buy shoes? Are all transactional search, and they are 10% of all searches. Looking to join something, looking to download something, looking to upload something, looking to find a chat. All of those kind of things tend to be transactional. It's only when you're asking a question which is purely informational, you don't really want to do anything at the other end, that's when it becomes informational.
Are there ways to analyze and examine the way your target market is using search engines via search analytics, this kind of thing, to determine the things we talk about in terms of intent-based search? You know, what is the actual intent? Where are they in terms of the buying cycle? At what stage are they in what are they doing before they're actually getting ready to potentially search for a solution, to make a purchase of some sort? But are there ways to examine and analyze the usage data for that kind of information?
There certainly is, and your own statistics. We will be coming into analytics in a later session. Your own analytics can certainly help you with that. One thing that a lot of businesses find, and anyone in our web audience that's got a website probably finds this, you know, oh, our brand search does really well. You know, people who search for our company tend to be our best customers. Yes, but they are returning. They have found you already through other means, either through referrals or through your content marketing or through search at earlier stages, liked what they found, and later have remembered your name, so they search for you by name rather than trying to go through all of the steps of their query and search before. So that's why brand search tends to do so well if you're doing things right. And brand search should be about 80% of your traffic. It really can be that high if you're doing things right for a lot of things, because a lot of things aren't instant purchases. I don't make up my mind which dentist to go to, which accountant to use, which lawyer to use on the first website I look at. I look at many, I research, I ask people about what I've found, I ask for their references and experiences. I try to find out if there's anything more I should be asking that I didn't know to ask at first. And there can be weeks of research overall between water cooler conversations at work, talking with my partner about the decision I'm going to make, and looking at the information before I finally select a vendor. By that time, I've looked at the vendors enough that I'm very likely to know them by name and go directly to their website by doing a brand search.
So what's a business supposed to do then in terms of when they get going? So let's just say they're launching either their first attempt at search engine optimization, or they're reinvigorating their campaign. What do they do? How do they? I understand we actually talked about early on the importance of understanding your audience. But how does that translate into then understanding your audience's behavior online?
Well, one of the very first things is to realize that your homepage, which a lot of businesses, gear towards all of those first-time visitors, is much less likely to be used by first-time visitors. This is the people doing those brand searches. This is the people who know you already. So one of the worst things you can have on your homepage is "Welcome to our site," because the chances are it's their second or third page view of your site, or they're a returning customer, and it's highlighting the fact you didn't know that. So that's one interesting tip for people. Your homepage, you tend to think of it as your front door for everybody, but it isn't. This is the door that members use. It's the members only portal. It's your specific product pages that are going to match the kind of queries they've got. If I want to know about tax law, and that's why I'm trying to get an accountant at the moment, I'm probably going to be searching for articles on tax law, and I'm probably going to find their blog or some article they've written about tax law, which isn't going to be their homepage. That's my first visit. That's where I start. I'm only coming back to their homepage because they impressed me with the article.
So the idea then is to take an inventory of what you do and make some assumptions, then I would suppose, by crafting pages that match to the user's behavior on the internet. So we know that if this first time user, they're not necessarily going to go to the home page. They're looking for answers to. So blog obviously works very well there. Could be a page with the specific types of information or reasons why somebody or solutions, information to solve a problem like tax law kind of thing. I think the blog, in that particular case, the blog works pretty well because it's an actual article. Could be a press release, not a press release, but a news article of some sort. I call it a blog, whatever. If it's information, to me, it's a blog.
Well, let's take a quick example.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you want to take up digital photography. You've been seeing a lot of great images around. You've kind of enjoyed watching other people's entrance in Cloud Wars, and you've taken a few pictures with your phone, but you now want to go the extra step. You're interested in maybe getting a little bit more serious about digital photography. So what's the very first search you make? Where do you start? And the chances are you start with a term like digital photography to get a broad overview of all the things that you might need to research. And that's where you really want these kind of portals and forums and communities, what we call the big hubs. This is, the central stuff where you can kind of learn about everything. So that's a very early stage search. They're nowhere near buying a camera or buying camera bags or any of the other accessories, but they're starting to learn about it, and they're using the shortest term that they think will find the broadest information.
And so understanding that, you can then try to position yourself in front of that search some way in some shape or form, whether it's participating in the forum or advertising is on one of these forums. But the idea is to understand that the reason I asked the question, and I'm glad you answered it that way, is understanding what is the most likely way somebody's going to use search as they start looking into the area that you happen to be an expert in. And it's downstream. You're not ready to build a relationship yet, but it can't hurt for them to actually know that you exist and have a place in this particular industry, right?
Yeah, exactly. And these are the searches that can start with things like, recurrent toothache. They want to know what are the potential causes, and then they can start researching that more deeply. Or starting up a business, what they need to know about accounts and starting up a business generally. These are the very general ones. They just want a big picture, the broad brush strokes, so that they can then divide it into chunks and start really drilling down into the stuff that matters to them. But it's that thing, you don't know what you don't know. So what they're trying to get is a big picture that may include some of the things they don't know so that they can learn.
So what's the mistake then that you see businesses make generally out of the gate? They just go keyword crazy and start pumping out pages for keywords without really understanding how users are using the internet, or
very often, and not understanding the content needs at that kind of point. One of the most common will be that everyone who sells cameras wants to target the phrase digital cameras, digital photography. This is such an early stage search. This is somebody wanting to see all of the options. So unless you've got the biggest range out there, or you've got really great reviews, you're not even going to be helpful to them, never mind going to get a conversion. There is no conversion to get at this stage. There is nothing you can do that is going to get somebody making that search to buy right now, except give them the camera.
That's interesting. That's a very important consideration, though, is it not? Particularly if
Absolutely.
you're just getting started out. And when you're talking about,
by the same measure, somebody searching for dentists is not about to book a dentist. What they're doing is building a list that they can then compare to that list of dentists that other people recommend, and they can, look at what's nearest. It's the start of the shopping process, but they are not going to convert. Not at that stage.
yeah, in
They're
fact,
going to talk to people.
I just published a little mini article on why professionals need marketing, because it still seems to me that it's commonly misunderstood as even what it is. Then why do I need it? One of the things is getting on that list. And what is that list? Well, the list is just as you say it. It isn't this etched in stone list. It's a list that people build. It's a list that people who refer you build. You're on the list. You're a recommended resource. You're recommended by search engines. You're recommended by people. One way or another, you've got to build up some sort of a reputation to become visible. Visibility is what gets you on that list. And it's important to understand what you just said with regards to search engines, because the list is of primary importance. Because people recognize that, yeah, this is why I bought this firm, because they were the top 5. They were of the top 5, and I picked them because. But search helps, because they use search engines to gather that information, to create their list, to see who's out there. So you got to be present, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it is vital to target those early searches if you can, but you need to understand these are not buyers. These are researchers. These are people researching to perhaps later buy. But this is where you build your brand. This is where you build your brand. This is where, by answering excellently and showing your knowledge of the things they really want to learn, you show that, wow, this company gets it. So later, when they are doing searches for specific cameras and trying to find a good price, if your name comes up, they know you, they remember you, they like you and trust you. That's the know, like, and trust.
There's a story in one of the books that I read recently that talks about a professional services firm was selected by a client, and the firm found out after the fact that there was a massive RFP process, and they asked the client, well, why didn't they participate in the RFP process? And the client basically said, because we already know what you can do. And how did they know this? Well, it was because of their internet content. So I just sat down with a lawyer yesterday. She's an individual who was in practice, and she got out of practice, and now she's back in practice. It was a very interesting lunch because she understands, and she gets that we're in a new era of buying, right? It's not the way it was back in the days when she was in full practice. One of the first questions she asks is, I really don't understand. Do I need a blog? Well, that's a loaded question, right? I mean, you hate to say it depends, but really it depends. But really, when someone asks me that question, particularly if they're a professional, I come as close to saying it's mandatory as I come with just about anything out there, particularly when it's a lawyer or an accountant, because you're a knowledge professional. And people are buying your intelligence. People are buying your skills. People are buying your ability to solve their problems with your head.
Interestingly enough,
no pun
I'm
intended.
completely opposite. My default answer to that question, do I need a blog, is no. What you need is content, but how you get that on the site is entirely up to you, and it's what's going to work. And sometimes white papers and proper articles are much better than blog posts. Blog posts are to make it easy to get the content on the site. It's a content management system.
Understood. Yeah. No, that's a good nuanced answer. But yes, the idea is that's why I say I'm getting as close to the content is what I'm after. It's the content that demonstrates your intelligence. It can be a white paper. It can be an ebook of some sort. It could be a book that you publish. But yes, what I'm after is when someone asks me that question, I say, well, unless you're going to deliver a white paper, unless you've written a book, you need to demonstrate your expertise. A blog is a fairly easy way to do so if you start out simple and small. But that's one of the reasons I suggested is because of this downstream evaluation. When people are looking and looking, you constantly show up. You show up with answers. You show up with, I don't know, an advertisement of some sort. You show up on a forum, but some way, shape, or form, you keep showing up. And just by showing up and building that trust, that really by demonstrating your expertise, you're much more likely to be on that list. You may even be at the head of the list. You know, so by the time they go shopping, there is no sales cycle. You win just because you've been there.
That's it. The sales cycle often happens where you don't necessarily see it. Every time two guys are talking about at the water cooler at work, and one of them is thinking of buying something that the other one got, that's part of the sales process. It's just not a part you're involved in.
Right.
You've already had your influence. It's whether that guy was impressed by your company before. So, you know, that part is there.
And I know we're going to go ahead. Sorry.
Well, take your point first, but then I want to get back to the digital photography and talk about what's the second step, because there are 6 definable steps.
I like going on to the next step. What I was going to offer was that people misunderstand I think this is an important piece of the conversation, because particularly on the small business front, even in the big business front, you constantly see talk of conversions, which we'll talk about next week, but you very rarely see people talk about presence. And the reason why I like the flavor of this conversation right now is because what we're talking about is that awareness stuff. When we talk about online ads, you and I discuss creating an ad that doesn't get clicked, but it's there because there's a psychological component to this. It's recall bias. It's formulating a relationship just because you're there and present. And the more someone sees you, the more they think you're the person they need to go to, or the firm that they need to go to. And so search is used in that fashion. It isn't just about ranks, conversions, page views, on and on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we were at with the very first thing is, you know, the very broadest sense of research, digital photography. What do I need to know? And the next step may be that, you know, they find there's people talking at all kinds of levels. There's a lot of stuff out there, forums for experts, things for people who are really experienced in this, that they're finding above their level. So it can be that, okay, I'm going to need a digital camera. I'm going to have to make that step. What's a good digital camera for beginners? Or what's a good digital camera for sports photography? Or digital camera for landscapes? Or digital photography of landscapes? You know, they want to know specifically now. They're starting to get into their specific interest in digital photography. They're still not ready to buy, but now they are personalizing the search. It's for their own needs, whereas before, you notice, it was generic, nowhere near a buy. Now they are at least thinking about for them specifically. So it is a step forwards, and it's why it's step 2. Step 2 is when it gets specific to them, and this is what we'll find as it goes through. The more specific it gets, the closer they are to the buy. Now again, they want information. They're not going to buy at this stage. It would take a miracle to get somebody at this stage to buy. They don't know enough yet, and they know they don't know enough yet. And even if you present them with an offer, the very best thing that's going to happen is they're going to research that offer elsewhere. If it's beaten elsewhere, tough, you've just lost that. But they're really not even at that stage. So again, this is another one where people will often, well, they'll hope to put their ad in front of people in the hopes it will be remembered later. It might, but the thing is, you just got in the way of their answer. They weren't ready for an ad. What they wanted was information. You've got the opportunity here to brand your expertise, to give them the help that they need, and later they're going to be much more receptive to your message. Now, if you've got a really great offer, it can work to get that offer in front of people at this stage, recall bias, but that's all it's going to be. You're only getting recall bias. You're not really getting branding. Branding is in helping them. I've always said the greatest piece of branding you can do in any aspect of life is to teach people something. When you were at school, you thought all of those kids around you were your friends, and you probably didn't think that much of the teachers. But years later, you look back, you remember the teacher of every lesson, but you can't necessarily remember which of your friends you even sat next to.
Now you remember the good teachers too.
Exactly. And every time you use a piece of knowledge, you tend to remember where you got it.
Well, and I know we link back to session number 2 in this series, and I said we were going to keep referring back to it because I believe it is of the utmost importance. I don't believe there's any step more important in creating a marketing plan on or offline than understanding the people that you're planning to sell to. And everything that you've said thus far is fully is only able to be done when you have a full understanding of exactly how the people that you're selling to think and when they're thinking it. What do they need? Why do they need it? This is all up front. But if you understand them, you're much more likely to be able to create the content, create the web experience that gets you found when they're in that phase. Correct?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So as we get more specific, we're getting closer to where the sale is. And these early searches, if you can't do the branding, if you don't have the expertise, you're not good at looking at the bigger picture. I've only got my specific project, area of this. That's what I know. I can't talk on. Great, don't do it. Don't bother going at this stage. Now, there are different techniques later, but this is the branding stage. You need to be good at what you're doing, or you're going to be sending them away with the wrong message. Oh, I remember them. They didn't know what they were talking about. That's not going to get you a sale later. So the very next stage is, I've started to learn about these things. Now, here's where another bias comes in. I'm thinking about buying a camera. I may already have a bias. I like Sony products. I've got several of those. They've always been good for me. So I would like a Sony camera, or I would like a Samsung camera. I know the brands I'm interested in. Now, this is the first time they're actually thinking about owning it, not just maybe using it. So this is where we're starting to get into the actual sale. This is the first point at which you could potentially get a sale. It's still going to be a little bit tricky, but it's potentially there. With the right approach, and especially if you've already done the branding in those first 2 phases, so in their minds, you really know this stuff. You are, the experts in this, and if you say this camera is the one to go for, and it fits with their own bias, this model of camera is the best one around by far, and here's our guarantee. We guarantee that if you find it cheaper anywhere else, we'll refund the difference. There's no reason for them not to buy. There's still a little bit of push there, but you've really made a strong case. This is a customer that if they won't buy right now, may still very well come back, even if they do find a cheaper offer somewhere else, because they know, like, and trust you. When you find something really cheap online, it's funny, we all do it. We will keep searching, hoping to find that bargain. And there is an imperative in the amygdala for this. We were born as hunter creatures. And when we start shopping, we get into that hunting mentality. We want to bring back a prize we can be proud of. We want to show everyone what we bagged. We don't want to bring home the runt of the litter. Oh, I caught this. That's not what we want. We want the big bargain. We want the story we can talk about. So remembering giving the customers the story that they can show off their shopping prowess with is always an interesting thing to do in the conversions phase. We'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see how you build up to an eventual purchase, per se. Sometimes you might be just supplying the information where they're going to go purchase something else anyways, because that's just what their brand loyalty is or whatever they're comfortable with, and they don't feel like making a change. But if you understand that, particularly on the product, the consumer side of the fence, then you can work the search engine to your favor by leveraging this type of information in the right way. That either caters to the bias or works around that bias. So you're looking for people that don't necessarily have it as solid as others, and maybe that's your next customer. But the reality is then it's not just a search phrase, it's truly understanding the mindset of somebody and making a presentation that speaks to that mindset, that meets that mindset at the right time.
Yes. The longer you're in your business and the longer you deal with search, the more you will have experience in identifying the mindset just from the kind of query made, so that you can tell exactly which part of the shopping process they're in, partly by what phrase they use, but also partly by what they did when they got to your site. Did they just read some of the informative articles, or did they go a little bit deeper? And what's particularly interesting is looking at the stage, and we'll get into analytics later, but looking at the stage where they look at your about page, because this is where they really want to evaluate you and your trust, which means they are considering giving you their money.
So is it true then that offline discussions, if you have some experience in a particular industry and you're used to listening to a particular type of client, isn't it true then that those offline discussions can inform how you might approach a search engine optimization strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you know about your market and your customers, and it's why we often say talk to your salespeople, because your salespeople are probably the ones who have more of this than anything else. You know that you've got a background in sales, Vince, and you know there are certain questions that come up at certain stages, and you could almost listen to a transcript of a meeting with a salesman and just from a line know how far into that meeting you are. By the kind of question that comes up, you know what's already been explained, what's the kind of client it is. It's amazing the kind of stuff that comes out. But in search, they're not asking your salesman, they're asking the search engine.
Well, I think it's an interesting point because the old school types to sit back and say, "Oh, what's this online business? Everything's face to face." And so, well, the good ones connect the two. They are connected. Really, you're just doing the same thing in an online world that you're really, really good at from an offline. You should not ignore that. In fact, you should, if you're signing up for search engine optimization now, and you hire somebody that's going to come in and do it for you, one of the first things you should be doing is either letting them talk to the people that you currently serve, or talk to your salespeople, or talk to you with regards to your conversations over the years with the people that you serve, because that's going to inform the campaign, because the campaign doesn't start at the end, at the purchase. The campaign starts way before that. And so there has to be a body of knowledge. There has to be an ecosystem of information that somebody's looking for, that the search engine consultant has to be aware of, so that they can start creating a campaign that matches that. And so you shouldn't ignore those conversations. You shouldn't ignore that experience. Salespeople, I would imagine, are phenomenal resources in developing these campaigns.
Yes, absolutely. Now, luckily I've got a few years in this business. I'm good at piecing the market together myself, and sometimes the search psychology is slightly. I don't know what happened there. Am I back?
I think so.
There we go. Okay, so that was interesting. Where was I at when I dropped out?
Where were you at?
Nice to know you're paying attention.
No, because I got a little irritated by the glitch too. I don't know what that was. I panicked. I thought my computer froze, and then I completely forgot everything we just talked about for the last 30 minutes. Because I literally just thought my screen just froze up, and I'm like, great. So now my computer's going to shut down on me.
No, mine shut down, and I jumped back in so fast that.
Anybody in the audience can remind us where we were talking? Anybody want to post a comment? Because it completely escapes me now. That's bizarre.
Well, let's. You were talking about the salesman.
You were talking about how you have, at this point in your career, an ability to sort of sift through what is required. Yes, it'd be nice to talk to different people, but you can sort of piece these things together as a result of just understanding how to go look for this kind of thing, understanding the business, understanding how to analyze maybe search behavior, that kind of thing. So that's where you had left off before my computer froze.
Okay, so that certainly gives me an advantage, because things can be different online. With a high street shop, it's not so bad for services, but it's a global market, and most shops never had to deal with the global market. They only had to know how they compared with Joe's shop up the road. That was it. That was their entire real competition. So for those businesses, it's very difficult for them to use their internal resources to do this. And it really is up to me to be able to fill them in on the global market, because they've just not had to deal with it. And I'm sure, well, I remember you saying to one of your clients recently, that you're on the global market now. You're starting to get contacts from the UK. You're starting to get contacts from South Africa, Canada. This is quite new to them. And sometimes the way they're used to selling something to a local market is going to be entirely wrong for an international market. So those are kind of considerations that, an SEO is bringing something new to the table. It's not always just about talking to the in-house experience, and sometimes the in-house experience doesn't directly translate.
Doesn't, yeah, and it's only one part of informing the actual campaign. Certainly not something to be ignored. It doesn't inform the entire thing, but it can be helpful. But yeah, certainly, remember when is it Chevrolet tried to sell the Nova in Mexico? It didn't go over very well, because translated into from to Spanish, Nova means don't go, and that's not a very good name for a car. So if you think of that conceptually, it's similar in terms of how people use search on an international scale. So even if you're a small business, but you have a global customer base, I think that's a very, very important consideration, that the user community in different parts of the world, even different parts of the country of origin, probably going to use things differently depending upon what it is exactly they're searching for, right?
Yeah.
We have a comment.
Phil has thrown in that we can always catch the replay to see where we were up to. Thanks, Phil. Helpful. But Pan has given us the answer that it was about the body information needed for a campaign. And everything that we're trying to do with this entire series, not just this SEO section, but every part of marketing, is about the information you have. It's a strategy game. The more you know about the moves that the other players are making, the better, smarter moves you can make, and the more chance you have of making winning moves. Intelligence is absolutely everything.
I'm going to use an example here that might inform some of what we're talking about as well. Recently, I was talking to somebody who was also talking to somebody who focuses and specializes on buyer persona development. And they were doing some work with, I believe it was Thomson Reuters, if I'm not mistaken. And Thomson Reuters is trying to sell to accountants. They're trying to sell a service to accountants. And they came in and they did this program to develop these buyer insights. And one of the things that came out of this program as an insight is that accountants, by and large, feel as if they're not valued, whether it's either working internally at a company or with a public accounting firm. And so it's an insight about the mindset of somebody. And so what Thomson did as part of their marketing campaign, one component of it is they created a conference, almost as if the conference is meant as an appreciation. They have an award. They invite accountants from all over the world, and it's this conference, this sort of appreciation thing. It never would have happened had they not done this sort of insight investigation, or investigation for insights. I'm thinking of it because primarily it informed their marketing strategy, but the same kind of insight could also inform your online strategy. And so if you understand that your clientele or your prospective market feels undervalued, you can come up with an online strategy that says you value them, and that you're going to be doing everything you can to have other people value them. Well, that's different than searching for a service. That's searching for validation in a totally different way. It just happens to be linked now to a service. And of course, you build this emotional connection. Their numbers are through the roof, and the marketing campaign is working like you can't imagine. But it was because of that insight, understanding your market. As we go back to that session too. I think that works in search engine optimization as well, does it not?
Massively, which is, everything we're doing builds up on the stuff before. So everything since session 2 assumes that you've really taken on board the stuff from session 2. Where this ties in directly with search. I mean, for years, one of the hottest terms in search, one of the biggest markets in search after the adult and pharmaceuticals is travel. Travel is massive. It's up there with financial services. Those are two of the biggest, hottest battlegrounds. And for years, the travel industry have been struggling to try and get as much traffic as they can. And majority of early decisions are influenced by blogs. And how come bloggers are still doing all the stuff? Well, it's really simple. Your website is talking about your facilities. You've got a hotel. You're talking about your hotel room. You're talking about the fact you've got a bathroom. You're talking about the fact you've got towels. Hello? You've just described every hotel in the world. It doesn't set you apart. And that's not why somebody goes to this location. Look, I'm thinking of going on holiday to Barcelona. It's to immerse myself in the culture of Barcelona. I don't care about the culture of your hotel. I don't care about the culture of your hotel. In fact, let's look at it. The Hilton and hotels like it have built their entire business around the idea that wherever you go in the world, the Hilton hotel will be exactly the same. That's it. It's one less thing to worry about, and it's particularly good for business travelers who really, aren't going to immerse themselves in the culture. They're going because they have to, and the more it feels like home, the happier they're going to be. It's one less thing to stress about. But for years, of course, it was the bloggers who were talking about that street festival or the art festival at a certain time of year, or when, the dance festivals, anything that was kind of like that, what that bazaar is like, what it's like to go around that museum, that is the whole reason this person is going to that country when it's a vacation. I'm going to Paris because I've always wanted to visit the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower, but I want to go to the Louvre. I've always wanted to go to the Louvre Museum. Right. Well, if your site isn't talking about the Louvre Museum and telling me about that experience and telling me what the walk is like between the hotel and that bistro on the corner and that coffee bar where you can enjoy the real French experience, that's what I want to know about. The bloggers are talking about that. So it's the bloggers that tend to influence exactly where somebody goes and where they stay. And the travel industry really struggled with that.
Well, it's funny because probably one of the reasons they struggle with it is because they think people buy based on how awesome they are. No, people buy based on what people need or what people want. And so it's understanding when you are traveling, what are your goals and objectives? What is it exactly that you're looking to get done? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you want to experience? What are your needs? What are your desires? What do you want to know about the place that you're going? And anybody that can look, I saw a realtor's blog in Miami. I don't. This was years ago. I don't remember the name of it. I wish I did because I'd link to it as an example. This wasn't a realtor's blog. This was a everything you need to know about Miami blog. And this is a high-end realtor. You can tell they're very successful. This website probably costs a small fortune, but it very rarely talked about real estate. It talked about the club scene. It talked about the restaurant scene. It talked about what's happening. It talked about politics and gossip and parks and recreation, the beach, you name it. Well, they're a hub. So when you search for something in Miami, they just keep coming up, coming up, coming up, coming up. But they're providing something useful above and beyond what it is that they do. I've offered this advice to a dentist when someone's coming to town. They're going to need a dentist. They're new in town. One of the first things they want to know is, where do I get something to eat? Where can I buy a car? I need a plumber. I need a plumber.
We did cover this. What are the searches people are making before they're searching for your product? So before I move to Miami, I want to know about Miami. So by the time I'm ready to move to Miami and I'm thinking about talking to a realtor, I already know you. I already have seen you. I've already learned to trust your advice, and I've liked your style. So yes, absolutely, this is something that we did talk about before. And one of the other things with real estate generally is, look, when somebody gets this house, what the house looks like is great. And I've seen, I've worked with a lot of real estate agents over the years. There's the plans of the house and they're worried about the photography of this room and that. That's nice, but it's only a quarter of the considerations. Yes, if this house looks good, I may come and visit, but I'm still making up most of my mind on that visit. What does that street outside feel like? What's this neighborhood like? How far do I have to walk to the closest baker? What's the public transport like? Because my kids aren't going to drive for a while. All of those kind of considerations really are important. It's about the where this connects to life, not just the house. And that's the part where understanding your customer is important, and it's where understanding your customer in search is also important. But of course, in search, they're probably going to have done those searches before they're looking for an area.
And they, and Jay Baer wrote the book Utility, and it's this is what we're speaking to here. It's just we're speaking to it in the context of search engine optimization, but it's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly informative because it tells you how to get into the mindset of somebody who ultimately is going to need what you need. And they do use search to find that stuff. So why not accommodate some of it yourself if it's going to build a relationship with them? But we have a question.
Yep. Paul Allen of Bruce Clay asks, do you find that business clients such as hotels are receptive to the idea of talking about life outside their walls? You said they struggle, and the real estate site is a great example. Well, you already know. Yeah, it can. With some clients, this is an incredible uphill battle.
I can tell you it is.
Because they just want to focus on, well, no, I just want to focus on making my money. This sounds too big and too broad and too general, and I don't want to devote a lot of time to that. I just want to get more sales. Well, that's great, but if you want customers, you need to be talking their language, and if you want to be talking their language, you need to be talking to them, and the only way you're going to be talking to them is if you're where they are, because it doesn't matter what you say if they're not there. And at the moment, they're off researching these other things. You need to know what they are searching for, because that's where they are. And if you're not there, you're not saying anything to them.
It's a great question, and I'm gonna make it even simpler but more complicated, or simpler but more difficult. And that is, it is a shift. The mind shift is it's not about you. The shift is it's about your customers. It's about the people that buy things. And the reason, sorry, I'm just losing my battery. The reason why people find it difficult to wrap their head around this is because they actually believe that it's their awesomeness that people are buying. No, it's where their awesomeness fits in the grand scheme of their customer's life, right? That's car manufacturers get this. They put the girl in the bikini on the hood of the car. Well, because they know the guy's not buying the car. He's buying the promise of picking up that girl. That's the point. And so that's exactly that's what we're talking about. And yes, it's really hard. I mean, I've had dentists say to me, what do you mean? What's that have to do with dentistry? And I'm like, it has to do with the people that need dentistry. That's the most important thing. You want to come in on sort of the back end, you want to build that relationship up front. And the way you do it is to embrace the buyer's perspective, the buyer's life.
Yeah, and that again comes back to that hunter-gatherer thing, that instinct I was talking about earlier. We want to bring home the prize. We want to bag the biggest one of the day. We want to feed the village and show off our prowess as hunters. Now, okay, we're hunting for a provider of something. We're hunting for a bargain. We're hunting for that. But it's still, what we want to hunt is a prize we can show off. So understanding that a lot of the time your product has to be something they can show off having bought, that's clever. Now, sometimes they only want to show off that they got the cheapest. Sometimes they want to show off that they got the greatest quality. And understanding where you fit in that and which one you want to be is, what we were talking about with session 2, where you either want to be the thing that they are prepared to pay more for, or you're starting to get into that who's the lowest bidder.
The bottom line, over and over and over again, is I say this. I almost say this in every blog that I write at this point. The secret, the trick, not about you. Think on that. It's not about you. It's not about you. So I actually wrote something on core message recently, just a blurb in my one of my new web pages, and it says writing your core message. You need a new core message if your core message starts off with we. If you say we, I, me, you need a new core message because you're still stuck in this notion that it's all about you. So what Paul is asking is, it doesn't mean that every business is going to go off and become their own Angie's List, but it's the mindset, and this mindset does affect search. It can affect search, and it should affect search, because you want to get to somebody. We used to say this when I was in sales selling software systems. we wanted to help create the RFP. We didn't want to get the RFP, because if you got the RFP down the line, you lost already. Somebody else already won. So the point is you want to get there before the request for a proposal, and you got to take
want to
this time
frame what
into
they're
search.
asking for in the first place, because if you frame what they want, you automatically the default choice, and you can even steer it towards things that you do better than anyone else. So
And search makes it easy to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. You can sell your strengths as strengths that they want. But taking the other aspect of Paula's question, yes, it can be very difficult. It's always going to be difficult, but let's face it, explaining any part of SEO to most clients is difficult. They want you to wave a magic wand and traffic to appear and profits to go up. Of course they do. And it's our job to reframe that and to make them understand why they need to change certain practices. And if they are unwilling to change those practices, to reframe their expectations and say, well, that's okay, you can do that, but here's what you're going to need to do to make this other position work. So if I don't want to be talking about what's happening outside my walls, then I need what's happening inside my walls to be unbeatable, which usually is going to mean you're going to have to beat everyone on price, or you're going to have to somehow offer exceptional service and show it. And that doesn't mean exceptional service in the way most people would talk about it. Vin, you and I have spoken about this before. You ask a dentist, well, what's your USP? Oh, exceptional service. Oh, right. So you're different to all the dentists out there that are advertising. We treat you like crap. Nobody's doing that. They all say they're doing wonderful stuff. It's like those hotels saying, look, we have bathrooms and towels. You and everybody. That's not a USP. That's a default expectation. The fact that you wave it around like it's something to be proud of is actually going to put people off. Because if that's what you boast about, my goodness, you've got nothing, have you?
No. You've got nothing. And
imagine going to the shop and you're looking for a chicken pie, and there's one of the boxes, our chicken pie has chicken in it. Are you going to buy it?
Well, it could say real chicken, and then all of a sudden you've got your USP, right? So it depends on the brand of the chicken pie, but this is the I laugh because I look at professional service providers. Famous for this, and I'm looking at web professional services websites all the time. Accountants and lawyers. Accountants, I love it. We're your trusted advisor. No kidding. That's actually a mandate of your license in the United States of America. It's not a differentiator. You have to be a trusted advisor. Your code of ethics will put you in jail if you're not. So that's not your tagline. You've got to come up with something different. And what this is. Getting away, there's another sort of segue to this in terms of Paul's question. The reality is you never really want to sell against somebody's beliefs. You want to find people that already believe they need it. And so you don't want to be in a position where you're convincing somebody SEO matters. You want to try to find people that say, yeah, you know what, I need search engine optimization. It's another channel that I'm not taking advantage of. But that's another topic of discussion. It's difficult to sell uphill, is my point. And
we kind of got off track of it.
Yeah, a little bit. No, we got off on a tangent.
Let's go back to that search steps thing.
Yeah, I think you were on 3. What's the 4th step?
The 4th step is I've now started to look at Sony cameras, and I'm now starting to get the model I want. So I know that a Sony WC357 is supposed to be, the best camera for my needs. It's got all the things I want. So that's the kind of search I may be looking for. Now I'm looking for people who sell that particular camera. Or I could be finding reviews on that particular camera. But it's certainly, that's the point. I'm now down to a specific camera. Before I can buy one, I've got to have done this. And if you sell cameras, that's where you're going. If people have multiple solutions to something, there's a range of options out there. Them narrowing down to the option that suits them is the thing before providing a vendor for that option. And this is where we can start to get into the price comparison. This is why I say if you're not doing that branding thing, it quickly gets into a race to the bottom price, because once you're searching for this make and model, if somebody's done the branding, there's a company I know, like, and trust in those results, that is automatically a plus point for them. I may be prepared to pay more, but otherwise I'm looking for the lowest price, because
Yeah,
we are now in the stage of price shopping.
well, the reality is that these consumer goods product companies, that's them. They've got multiple market segments. They've got luxury and they've got not so luxury. And so you're always going to find that commodity based market. In some businesses that makes sense. You're selling to the lowest common denominator. Corolla versus a Ferrari. The Ferrari is you're not getting a discount deal on a Ferrari, right? You're buying a Ferrari for all kinds of other reasons. Corolla is totally different. But so you want to be able to configure search to match. Now, this is a very interesting piece, because what you're speaking to, I just recently published an article on how I want dentists to start thinking of their marketing plan accommodating different types of patients. And I listed, I don't know, 15 or so different types of patients in demographics, location, on and so forth. But any type of business, unless you're like focused on one particular core service or product that sells to one particular type of person, you've got a search engine optimization strategy. You've got a marketing strategy for those different types of people. You've got to. And so they're going to be using search just like anything else in a different way. And so you've got to be able to greet them there.
Exactly.
So,
You find their concerns. So it's kind of, that was, remember we were talked about in the second stage, where people are starting to apply it to their own needs. That's where you start to first target the different demographics. Dentist good with children is starting to get there. And this is where, it's apparent, and they're looking for that aspect. If you don't sell that aspect, don't turn up in searches for it. But if you do, this is where you want to be. No, this is getting ridiculous. Okay, second one.
that's the Hangout on Air technology for you. Blab it is.
Well, let's face it, this is the first time this has happened to us. And
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not entirely sure that it isn't my children downloading great big files somewhere. For me, this is evening time. The kids are home. God knows what they're up to. Okay, so the fifth step, where we go next, is they are adding one more word, and this is often price, cheapest, cheap, lowest cost, those kind of terms. If you've got to this stage and you're the cheapest provider, great, but you've cut your business. This is what you've lost. 10% of the profit you could have made, maybe. Certainly a couple of percent has gone from your business simply because you waited to this stage of search and let the customer get to this stage of search. Some are always going to go there, but it means nobody gave them conviction and good reason to make a decision earlier. Nobody gave them that guarantee that if you do find it cheaper, we'll refund it. Because once you've got the guarantee, you feel safe about it. You can brag about the trophy you've got, because if somebody does wave in your face that you could have got it 10% cheaper somewhere else, you can look that up and refer it to the company and get your money back, the difference. So you don't bother. So where we have with that is, we're in that race to the bottom. There is a magical sixth step, and this one can come before 4 and 5, and that's what we were talking about in the first place. It's the brand search. This is where they search for your company by name because you already impressed them earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You're the company they want to deal with.
And that's a great way to look at it, and that requires an enormous amount of effort. You got to do it right, but that brand is important. We all have one, company or otherwise. And the studies suggest that the ones that have the best brand are the ones that make the list. And ultimately, if you're on the list, you have a chance at getting chosen. If you're not on that list, you have no prayer. Just the way it is.
Yep. Absolutely. And, you know, we've talked about the way that that happened. And what we've been talking about today is the different kinds of searches people are going to be making, where they're going to be looking, what they expect to find there. Let me give an example that is a classic one for some years ago. Uh, I dealt with a company that sold video players. This was, you know, at the time, DVDs were just about coming in, but they sold video players. And he said, "Well, I want to optimize for videos. I want to be number one for videos." And I said, "No, you don't." "What do you mean I don't?" And I said, "Well, look, most people searching for videos are looking for the actual videos, not a video player. And the majority of those are looking for online videos they can watch rather than even a video cassette. You know, they're not going to be interested in your video recorder at all. You're doing negative branding by getting in their way and looking like an idiot, and you're competing with things that the search engine doesn't want you to rank for. You know, this is it. You'd be a terrible result. You make the search engine look bad for that search. So although you can hire somebody like me and I can target it incredibly aggressively, it's still never going to work because the search engineers don't want it to work. If if we ever do manage to rank for the search videos, then that search engine is a bit broken and the engineers will not rest until they fix it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's also illogical that you'd want to rank for that. It's just someone not considering how people actually make decisions to buy stuff.
so next he said, okay, so I want to go for video players. I said, eventually, maybe. If you can talk authoritatively about everything about video players and do great reviews of all possible makes and all possible solutions for video playing, because remember, some of those are looking for software video players. Because back then, you know, there were all the different file formats, and Windows Media Player only dealt with a couple. You know, people were looking for software video players. So even video players, too broad. Okay, well, so where do I want to go for? I said, well, look, for what you do, focus on the brands you sell. So you want to be ranked for Sony video players, Hitachi video players, because this is the first stage at which somebody is actually thinking of owning one. Remember what we said? Stage 3 is the first time they're actually thinking of this even entering their house. And that is an important consideration when you're looking at keywords. And it's easy to do keyword research. You can use the AdWords tool and see the relative volumes of things. And it's easy to go for the big numbers. But the reason those numbers are big is because it includes thousands of people who are not your market.
Correct.
And they will not be impressed by you getting in the way of what they are trying to do. Do not go too broad, go specific. Go specific, because those are the people who you've got a chance with. Anybody else, you're just wasting their time.
That's an important consideration. Very, very important consideration, and a great segue into 2 weeks from now. The session is we're going to complete this series within a series. We're going to talk about, I think, the conversion side of things, taking a look at what happens when people actually do find you. What do you want to happen? I think that's a good segue because you want to make sure that you're not getting in the way of them accomplishing what they're out to accomplish, because it works against you. So with that, do you have any closing remarks for this particular episode?
Just a little plug for that next session, because next session is where we tie the two things of how the search engines work and how people work with the third party in this, which is how your business works, because there are specific considerations. I was talking the other day about a campaign I did for Visit Wales, the Welsh Tourist Board, who they had a TV campaign about their mud. It was a great campaign. I'll stick the link in the comment stream later. But it was this thing of somebody rinsing mud off a boot. And it was saying you can have our great experiences, you can have our wonderful food, and you can have, you know, all the things that Wales can offer, but you can't have our mud. It's special. Now, Wales is a muddy country. It rains a lot. There's a lot of valleys that collect that rain. It's muddy. They play rugby, which is a muddy sport. There is something about the Welsh mud, and it was designed to appeal to people. You know, now their website kind of tried to do the same thing. It tried to be offbeat. Marketing often is. Think of that classic Wonder Bra advert, the Hello Boys one. It didn't mention bras. It wasn't talking about great support. It didn't need to. It was one picture and 2 words, and neither of those words was bra. You know, hello boys, but it said it all. And it changed the way people thought about padded bras. So in marketing, we often play with these kind of things. In language, we use metaphor, where we're not saying what we mean. We use sarcasm, where we're saying the opposite of what we mean. And it can be very difficult for search engines to understand those kind of things. But that's sometimes where marketing lives. It's in the little play on words that means something and connects with our audience and shows that shared bond, that we can say one thing and we both know we mean something else. That's a marketing connection. So we will be talking about that kind of aspect next time, how we make how people work and how search engines work fit with how business works and how our marketing works to get results.
Okay, folks, you heard it from Ammon, and we'll set up the event and to get the invites out, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Thanks for coming by today. Appreciate the support.